The Dharma, incomparably profound and exquisite, is rarely met with even in hundreds of thousands and millions of kalpas. We now can see it, hear it, accept and hold it. May we realize the true mind of the Tathagata. Today is May 31st, 2023, and it is the fourth day of Sesshin. So tomorrow, day 5, we begin in June Sesshin, but it's not the June Sesshin, it's the May-June Sesshin. There will actually be a June Sesshin later this month. Here at Mountain Gate, we have a dog. The dog is a big dog. He's an outdoor dog, and his breed is that of a Great Pyrenees. Great Pyrenees developed in the Pyrenees Mountains as a protector of herds of sheep in the mountains to keep them safe from wolves and so on. And you would think he would be a very aggressive dog, but he's not aggressive towards people. And during the day, he sleeps a fair amount because at night he is doing his rounds all night long, chasing away bears, mountain lions, and other animals, and keeping us safe. He's a very sweet dog and loves people, loves to give belly rubs, and is an outdoor dog by his own preferences. Unfortunately, that keeps him full of burrs, but it's a small price to pay because he's a lovely, lovely being. Very, very loving. Recently, the first several days of Sesshin, you may or may not have noticed that there was another dog here. This one was an indoor dog. This was Meadow, who came with Julie. And Meadow was her own dog initially. But as time went on, the days that she was here with Julie in Sesshin, she began to emanate Boo's behavior. Boo, classically, when he will receive a treat inside, will immediately go outdoors and eat it outdoors, or bury it, or do something with it. I think he eats it, but we don't know for sure. And initially, Meadow would simply eat hers inside. But as she observed Boo doing what he did with his treat, she started following suit. And with other things. In fact, one of the last mornings she was here, Boo was off chasing away something in his very deep bark, which actually is quite reassuring. It doesn't keep many of us up at night. And immediately, Meadow goes toward the same direction, but inside, and starts barking with the same kind of voice and the same rhythm of the bark. Now, Meadow is part hound, so it's a very different voice that a hound dog has compared to a Great Pyrenees. But there she was doing woof, 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 which was Boo's normal challenge cry. And it was very interesting for a number of reasons to see how this younger dog began to learn behavior patterns from Boo. Another noticeable thing about Boo is that he has amazing ability to be completely unstressed. After a night of going around the building whenever it's necessary to chase something away, he will just snooze on the porch outside the kitchen, and his snooze is totally relaxed. And yet in seconds, if something is heard or something comes around, he's instantly alert. No stress in any of it. It's a wonderful model for we human beings. He is able simply to be totally relaxed when he's totally relaxed, and totally on guard in the moments when he's totally on guard. And they go back and forth in seconds sometimes. It's a model for all of us. And the reason I bring up these dogs and their behavior is because human beings also exhibit the same kind of behavior. Of course, we don't go around barking at night, but we do learn from the very moment we're born how to be like the people that we are living with. There is an example of this, actually. There is I think he's a child psychiatrist, but I'm not sure, very, very effective therapist who has specialized in working with extremely troubled children. And he wrote a book called The Boy Who, Boy Who Was Brought Up Like a Dog, or something to that effect. The Boy Who Lived Like a Dog, The Boy Who Was Raised as a Dog. I think that's what the title is. And in this true story, there is a young woman who gets pregnant and is irresponsible, and so her mother takes over the care of the infant. The mother dies a year into the infant's care, and the mother's partner, who raises dogs, went to social services and said, here is this infant, you got to do something with him, but it fell through the cracks. And not knowing how to raise children, this older man, because the woman who was the grandmother was in her 60s, and so he presumably was as well, just put the baby in a cage with the dogs. And 7 years went by. So by this time, the little boy is 8 years old. And he has learned through example to be like a dog, barking, exhibiting dog-like behavior around human beings. He was kept in a dog cage for all those years. And finally, the man who was taking care of him, sort of, went again to social services and said, look, you've got to do something about this little boy. And so they thought, oh my God, we've forgotten him. And they went and they took him. And the therapist had a big job of helping to help this little boy to regain humanness. He just goes into the beginning parts of the story, a little bit about how he works with a child who is quite frightened. And so it's kind of an extreme case, but not unusual, because there are so-called feral children who are abandoned in forests and somehow are adopted by wolves or other animals and learn to be like their adoptive parents. And someone told me we had a veterinarian student for a long time until he died of a heart attack. And he told me at one point of reading about in India, people in a village were reporting white ghosts with blue eyes. And upon investigation, these were feral children. One of them was 7 years old, I think, and the other was 16, actually, a girl who was 16. And so they captured them and brought them into civilization. Neither of them ever learned how to speak. And that is something that if a person is exposed to different languages at early ages, they learn all those different languages. If they are not exposed to human language, they don't learn human language. And that was the case with these children. The 16-year-old only lived a few months in what would have been, from her perspective, captivity. And I think the boy only lived another 5 years. When a baby is born, at first they're sort of trying to learn how to run this machine called a human body. And it takes some time to learn how to coordinate hands and arms and feet and legs. And you can observe it readily on pretty much every little child It takes a few weeks, a few months for the child to, well, not a few months, but it's several weeks before the child learns how to coordinate enough that they can roll over. And then it takes them a little more time to learn how to roll back. It takes them longer how to coordinate arms and legs in a way that they can crawl, and so on. The first thing they learn to do is smile, and that is in response to the caregiver smiling at the baby. That's the first instance of conditioning, and it goes on from there. And as the child goes, as we all have grown in our own private environments, we take on the behavior of our parents or the caregivers, and sometimes it's traumatic, sometimes it's wonderful and loving, and it results in a coloration of our life. There is something that has been mentioned many times before in Teisho's called adverse childhood experiences, and it's known that they affect brain development. They alter the brain development, it's a very real thing, and it has consequences. It doesn't mean that if you've been, for example, abused as an infant, that you won't be able to learn how to read and write and do all kinds of things that we are usually able to do. It just means that there's more emphases in parts of the brain development than in others. So this is the background of suffering. The Buddha himself spoke of it. And as we grow and are conditioned by our environment, and as we grow older by our expanded environment, and things happen, sometimes we're treated kindly, sometimes we are not, and we develop ideas about ourselves in consequence to those experiences. One of the things that they discovered about kids that grow up in the slums, a high proportion of them end up adopting the behavior and either getting killed in gunfights relatively early on, or surviving in very dysfunctional ways. But here and there are kids that don't go that direction. And what they discovered about those particular kids is that there was someone in their life. It may not have been a parent. It may have been a teacher or an older friend, parents of a friend. There was somebody who believed in that kid, honored that kid, and supported that kid mentally, emotionally. It may only have been for a relatively short while, but it was significant in terms of the person's, the kids' own sense of themselves as being worthy or not. The reason I bring this up in terms of Zen practice is we all come in sort of colored by these experiences. And it is what, if they were even a little bit challenging, even if we grew up in a relatively healthy and loving family, sometimes there are other experiences that kids have that impact their self-image. And so we grow up thinking a certain thing about ourselves and feeling whether or not we are worthy of nice interactions, whether we're worthy of being cared for. All kinds of ideas come into our heads as a result of our experiences. Then we come to Zazen, and it is this layer of conditioning that is something that we have to kind of sink into and through in order to have enlightenment experiences. And for most people, there is a certain amount of quite a bit of work that is involved in in doing this work. And of the people who begin Zen practice, a very, very small portion of them actually continue to deep results. I won't say final results because it took, for example, the Buddha 6 lifetimes that he remembers before he was in his final lifetime where he became the Buddha or the awakened one, to be working seriously on himself, developing his generosity, his kindness, his open-mindedness, his acceptance, all of these things. They don't come instantly. In my own life, I remember realizing as a pretty young kid, I was less than 6 years old, that I was greedy. And I was aghast at that. I didn't want to be greedy. And I worked on it with everything I could back then. And I remember at 10, realizing I hadn't progressed an inch in that goal. It was quite depressing. We do have a tool, however, that will make all the difference in the world to every one of us. And that is the extended breath, Sosokkan, in which one breathes out naturally. And then when you would begin to breathe in again, you simply breathe further out. Now, you're not trying to force your breath out from the beginning. You're just breathing naturally. And you're paying attention, very close attention, the closest possible attention to the experience in your body, the muscles moving, and sensations as the muscles move, any pains or other kinds of things, or even memories can come up when you reach a certain point, and it happened to be where you were punched in the gut by a school kid when you were 9 years old, and that will be stuck in your body. The energy that resided, the energy that came forth in that experience will be stuck in your body until you allow it to free up. And we allow these things to free up through clear awareness, clear non-judgmental awareness, but that doesn't mean that the pain that went along with that experience doesn't necessarily come up. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. We continue with this practice with a sense of possibility that if you breathe out long enough, far enough, if you pay close enough attention, long enough, deeply enough, that you will become free. Little by little, you will become free. That's the good news. The challenging news is that in order to do that, you will really need to pay attention to the sensations in your body that may have been stuck there by difficult, painful experiences. But it's only the energy. You don't have to remember what happened. That's completely unnecessary. In fact, it's better if it doesn't come to consciousness in some ways. But tuning in, offering open acceptance. That doesn't mean that you have to like that feeling, but it means that you are allowing it to come into consciousness and be curious about it and open to the full energy that is passing through your body or moving in your body. That is something that you ordinarily would have escaped from into thoughts, into emotions, into whatever you can do to escape it. And if you allow yourself simply to receive, as Mitra-roshi wrote about his very deep Kensho experience, then there is not a problem. But it's not something that instantly happens. It takes a commitment, it takes work, it takes time. But with all of that, it's effective. And by time, sometimes you'll be moving with great interest into this unknown. Sometimes you will have absolutely no interest whatsoever in it. And you may as well be walking down Main Street and looking in the candy shop or something, rather than sitting in the Zendo in Zazen, searching for your original face. But you can do it, and it is very productive. And just like an infant, through work, attention, energy, first learns to smile, is able to coordinate the face muscles so that a smile can come forth, and then is encouraged by the reaction of the people that person is smiling at, that little baby is smiling at, and then gradually learns how to turn over, to roll over, to roll back over. And I remember when my great-grandson, my first great-grandson, first learned to stand up. I was visiting and sleeping on an air mattress next to his crib, and I woke up, and there he was standing up, holding on to the top rail with a big smile on his face, definitely feeling that he'd accomplished something. And we go on from there. We learn how to walk. Somewhere I have a little quick video of him in his diapers. It was Southern California, so it was warm, and he's learning how to walk. And he's every once in a while he sits down accidentally, and then he gets himself up and starts walking around some more, and gradually learns more and more things, how to talk. One memorable Sunday morning when his parents were sleeping in, they woke up and discovered that he'd wakened up ahead of them, opened the refrigerator door, taken out the egg carton. By this time, I think he's 1.5 or 2 years old. And their sofa at the time had the cup holders. And so he had cracked eggs into all the cup holders. At any rate, we learn things. We learn how to do things. And we learn things about ourselves, some of which are accurate and appropriate. Others fit into the category of a self-image that is not at all accurate. And it's all wonderful to explore. And we have to do it not in the realm of the intellect, not through words, but through our body, through sense, through a sensing of what's going on. And not necessarily, it means that our breakfast is uncomfortable, or that we remember when we fell off our bike for the first time or something like that. It means just simply feeling the energy, not afraid to feel the energy. We tend to shut down our awareness of certain kinds of energy in our body because they're uncomfortable. We don't like them. For example, anger. Anger is a big one. Yet when we open to the experience of the energy of anger, we realize that it is energy. It is exciting, and it has no coloration other than the fact that suddenly you've got energy. And in my own experience, it was like electricity running up and down my arms. It was exhilarating. And when you reach that point, you don't need to act out on it. You don't need to go fight somebody. You don't need to say something nasty. You don't need to, go hurt yourself, which some people do when they turn the energy inward. You're simply accepting it, and there is great freedom in that. And as you learn how to do this through your Zazen, and it is part of Zazen to do this, your sense of curiosity, your sense of perplexity, your sense of something just beyond your reach is really the koan at work. And the rest of it is moving through the hindrances by open acceptance. Radical acceptance is one of the terms used here, of whatever the energy is. And gradually these things are winnowed out. They're let go of. Again, we don't even have to know what it is that's let go of. Sometimes these things happen in the middle of the night, or we'll have a dream that expresses it. Not to worry about how it happens. It's joyful when it does. And it offering one more inch of freedom, maybe even a yard, maybe even a whole mile of freedom. And from there you can go even deeper and open to greater ability to be free from your conditioning. And that is major. When we can walk into a situation totally unafraid, totally able to receive whatever comes to us in that situation, we're not caught, we're not tense, we're not finding ourselves reactive. And without that stress, we are able to simply respond to circumstances as they come towards us. This is moving towards emancipation from what we're caught in that is keeping us from being free. And when we are free, each segment of increased freedom allows our innate wisdom and compassion to function more freely. And we become the person we were born to be. Zen practice is the only way I am aware of in 82 years of working in this direction that is truly effective. Psychotherapy can help a great deal, but it only can go to a certain depth. We need the tools of Zazen or other spiritual practices to reach the place of being truly free. And it's there, and we can do it. I thank you for listening. We'll stop now and recite the 4 vows.